Hey gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. Let's get right into the show. Smash that like, hit subscribe. We've got a bunch of great videos to watch as we segue into question period, which we'll hit right on time. Anyhow, these are the videos that
democracy.
I think will be fun to watch.
And this is how dangerous the left is. This week, the PM cancelled local elections for 4.5 million voters. Why? Because he is so under pressure to keep his own job, especially off the back of the fallout from the Peter Mandelson-Epstein scandal, that he wanted to take away the rights of voters. He is so scared of his own shadow and so scared of the ballot box that he cancelled citizens' rights. Well, it backfired. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage launched legal action in the High Court and Starmer was forced to backflip. Alex Armstrong is the host of Alex Armstrong Tonight on GB News. He has this editorial on Starmer's ticking time bomb.
The Prime Minister was forced into a humiliating U-turn on cancelling local elections across the United Kingdom. Initially, the British government had planned to cancel elections for 4.5 million British people, to much uproar, let's put it lightly. In those areas, Labour control most of the councils. They control 20 out of 30 of them or so. And in those areas, even more interestingly, Reform UK are doing exceptionally well. That's the party led by Nigel Farage, of course, now leading in the poll. So the question was always asked, is this all happening because Labour are terrified of Reform UK? Well, of course, they've been arguing that they need to do this little restructure, this little redrawing of the councils, part of a devolution plan they say is going to give more power to local people. But of course, Brits up and down the country have not been happy about it. Reform UK said this is a farce and decided, because it was the second year running they were cancelling these elections, that they were going to take the government to High Court. Now, that all came to a head where the government had to concede to Reform UK, a party of just 8 members of Parliament, and say that actually Reform are right. They've done the legal background, despite the Prime Minister being this forensic lawyer. Reform UK have beaten them. And now these 4.5 million people will get their right to vote in their local authorities. This, of the 14, 15 U-turns the Prime Minister has done, is the biggest, huge, tremendous U-turn so far, because it's going to give all those people the right to vote, and you can bet your bottom dollar they are going to use that right to vote to boot out the beleaguered Labour Party out of those seats. But there's some more bad news, because now the taxpayer has to cough up 63 million quid to help these local councils, who have now got just a matter of weeks to get ready for local elections. And on top of that, the government has to pay Reform UK's legal fees. It is utterly disastrous for this government. Now, of course, the other story here is that the Prime Minister, who's been in the front page of the press almost every single day for the last 6 weeks, well, he's now going to have a leadership contest, very likely on his hands, the day after those local elections in May, because as we know, he is clinging on to power because his Labour backbenchers cannot pick a leader yet, and some of them just aren't ready. And there's another interesting twist to this, because Angela Rayner, who used to be the Deputy Prime Minister before she was sacked, sensationally sacked out of office, well, it was her idea in the first place to cancel elections. She got away with it while she was still in government, and her predecessor hasn't got away with it. So now people are asking, was her original policy illegal? That's going to be another huge scandal sitting on this government's door, alongside the Mandelson files and the Chagos Islands. 2 are the massive, huge problems for this government. So when I say this is the most embarrassing U-turn so far, because it looks like with the Prime Minister's going to be in office for a couple more months, he's going to have a few more U-turns he's going to have to swallow. Can he survive till May at this rate? We're just going to have to wait and find out.
Unbelievable. And can you imagine if it was the Tories or Reform cancelling elections? The left would have had a field day.
In Canadian federal politics, the Canucks are represented by 2 separate yet unequal groups. the globalists who sold out, and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories.
These are some of the few known photos that exist of Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, better known as El Mencho, once Mexico's most wanted man.
He's one of the biggest drug capos in the history of drug trafficking around the globe.
The shadowy figure ran the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, known for its brutality and military-style arsenal, which has been on display in the western state of Jalisco.
What is unprecedented is the level of pushback I think we're seeing from cartel henchmen across Jalisco.
El Mencho was once a police officer. He became a drug dealer in the 1980s, then was arrested for trafficking heroin in the U.S. and deported to Mexico.
And he started to follow the normal career of Mexican crime boss.
He worked for the Sinaloa cartel before creating his own organization in 2009 that developed a notorious reputation for attacks on Mexican security forces.
Well, the economic operations that make the Jalisco cartel so powerful are very much linked to the lives of the politicians who are governors of those states.
But the Trump administration ramped up pressure on Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum to go after drug kingpins, threatening strikes on cartel targets. The U.S. provided intelligence to Mexico in the operation against El Mencho.
It is a very superficial way to attack the cartels and doesn't speak to a sort of more profound, deep extraction of their roots that are so deeply embedded in Mexico.
Unless the political protection of the Jalisco cartel ends, organized crime experts warn his death won't change much on the ground. Taria Isri, Global News, Montreal.
But that it's been fixed, and she said in the last 24 hours, Canada's emergency watch and...
Now we're going to check out CBC, saying that we should visit Mexico instead of Florida.
Response Center received 440 calls, Andrew. 3 of those calls involve consular cases. 2 of those are injuries that she says are non-life-threatening, would give no more detail about that. She said their government is not considering sending repatriation flights at this time, nor any kind of military assistance, and that today she had arranged a briefing in English and in French for MPs who obviously would have perhaps constituents there who are very concerned.
And Karina Anand was also asked about some other topics.
Well, she said, of course, that the government is monitoring how she described a serious and rapidly evolving security situation that's affecting various regions of Mexico. She said, of course, the government has updated the travel advisory for Canadians going to Mexico to expand the list of affected areas. She said that all Canadians in affected regions should heed the direction of local authorities, travel only when it's safe to do so. She was asked and said the Canadian government did not get any kind of heads up from Mexico that this was going to happen, considering how many Canadians are down there. And she sidestepped the question about whether Canada should have gotten a heads up, considering how many Canadians are down there. She said on one hand, she wants to alert Canadians that this volatility may continue to spread. But on the other, she says that she's been told by her Mexican counterpart that the situation is expected to
smash the like, guys.
Normalize. Not sure how he would define normalize, but that's what she was told. Have a listen to what she said.
I am concerned with the safety and security of Canadians first and foremost. In answer to your question, in my conversation with Foreign Minister de la Fuente last evening, he indicated that the situation should stabilize in the coming days and that this was a targeted operation which will not continue.
Now, as of 7 a.m. this morning, she says more than 26,000 Canadians have registered with Global Affairs in Mexico. The registration is supposed to be able to make sure that travelers get up-to-date updates and travel advice. But since registration is voluntary, Anand says that the actual number of Canadians in Mexico is likely much higher than that.
Country. Minister, Parliament treated Bill C-5 like an emergency. So we passed it in essentially 10 days last June. And you and your government told us that national interest projects just couldn't wait. Yet 8 months after royal assent, the Schedule 1 list of designated projects, the entire engine of the Act, is still at zero. So, Minister, you've already referred to two full tranches of projects to the Major Projects Office in your comments, including the Montreal-Contrecoeur Terminal. Why has not a single one been formally designated? When will you stop referring projects and actually sign the first conditions document so shovels can hit the ground?
Well, the Bill C-5, of course, created the Major Projects Office. And I have the privilege of working closely on transport and other projects with that office. I can tell you that the project pipeline, Canadians should know, that the project pipeline is chock-a-block, is full of projects that are transformative in terms of our energy superpower aspirations, in terms of our logistics and port and other transportation priorities. And these projects are progressing, in my view, extremely quickly through the system. A number of strategies and projects have been referred to that office. Ms. Farrell has assembled a very impressive team around her to be able to quickly assess these projects. When we encounter obstacles, their job, my job, the government's job is to respond quickly to those, and our aspiration is to get big things done more quickly than ever. And the Major Projects Office is instrumental in getting us there.
It's very important, Minister, to get big things done. We just heard from Nanaimo Port that they said it took 5 years of regulatory red tape, and it cost an escalation of a $105 million project to $160 million. That makes it less affordable, and it makes it more difficult to expand trade. Minister, in Calgary last week, you mentioned that Canada has slipped on reliability. As a former Minister of Labour, you know better than anyone that voluntary protocols and interim orders do not provide the stability that our supply chain needs. So given your background, what is your specific solution to end the cycle of port disruptions while respecting collective bargaining?
McKinnon is a bum. Listen to this answer.
That's an extremely good question, and I thank you for that. It's something that we're working on presently. It is true that Canada, to refer to the first part of your observations, Mr. Albus, it is true that we've taken too long to approve projects. We're changing that. It is also true that reliability around the Canada Labour Code and labour disputes in Canada is something where Canada has suffered. You can literally see when a labour dispute happens or is even threatened, marine traffic turn around on the ocean, head to another port, and never come back. So Canada must urgently solve this.
Smash that like, gang. This guy is hard to tolerate, but this is where we get the frontline news.
The interest of workers and in the interests of our nation's supply chain security and prosperity. So we are going to be consulting with labor, with owners, operators in our supply chains to ensure that we get to a better process, a more predictable process. Neither unions nor employers like this late-stage bargaining, this 11th hour pressure. It disrupts families. It disrupts other unionized environments across the country. I made the observation when I was Labour Minister, and will make it again, that hundreds of thousands of union jobs across the country are at risk, including in my own riding at a newsprint mill, when labour disruptions are threatened or actually executed. We want to bring more order and predictability to that process.
Predictability would be helpful, including regulatory predictability, and not designating anything under C5, I think, is a legitimate criticism, as is whether or not you're going to be fixing, while respecting collective bargaining, the cycle of port disruptions. Now, you say that you want more diversified trade, but Anchorage is literally the Wild West right now in places off the coast of BC, and will only get worse before someone gets hurt. When will you replace the voluntary 2018 Anchorage Protocol with a binding legislative framework for the BC coast?
Frankly, I'm more interested in how we turn ships around more quickly. So that we need less anchorage. I think the long-term solution to this is to have more efficient ports where boats have predictable berthing and are turned around, loaded, and off on their journey to foreign markets. The infrastructure that we have is not always favorable to that, and in Vancouver and in other ports around the country, we have to work on the investments that expand our capacity, but also, and one of the things, and I'm glad you referred to my Calgary speech, one of the things that I went on at great length about was the fact that we need to digitize our trade, make it paperless, make it easier for marine shippers, make it easier for our railways, make it easier for our port authorities to understand and measure travel times, berthing times, turnaround times, and understand where bottlenecks are in our logistics system. So we will be working very, very hard on that aspect of improving Canada's supply chains as well.
Minister, I appreciate the response, but I do think you need to look at Anchorage in addition to more efficient ports.
Happy to take note of that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albus, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here, Mr. McKinnon. I'm going to take a little bit of liberty here, and I want to, because this is an issue that, as I've honestly on Friday.
Smash the like for Philip Lawrence, one of our favorites.
Alone, I got two or three calls of people in tears, and that's with respect to the high-speed rail and the concern that it's causing in Eastern Ontario, and I assume as well in some of the rural areas of Quebec. They're really concerned out there, and I'm hoping we get some concrete answers as much as possible from you, Minister. So I'm just going to ask you some pretty concrete questions, and hopefully I'll get those answers. When will the final route be determined?
This year.
Thank you. When will expropriation begin, and when will property owners get notice of that?
The expropriation provisions, should they be adopted by Parliament, that land acquisition phase would begin almost immediately.
And what notice would they receive of expropriation, first right of refusals, or other limitations on their properties being registered?
What note?
What notice? How much time will they get in terms of from the time when they're told that their property is potentially expropriated to the time when they are having their property taken from them?
I'll get back to you on the exact time frames, but there will be lots of contact. We will have extensive maps published of the exact alignment, and people will on the ground will be on the ground to meet with property
Minister,
owners.
Excuse me, I have a point of order.
Just a point of order that we are here to talk about both via rail and ports, and while I am very excited about Alto, I know that the focus of today's conversation is on those pieces.
The minister's happy to answer. I'd also say that one of the government's responses to Via's poor service is the creation of the Alto high-speed rail. So I think it completely fits in foursquare.
Thank you for your point of order, Ms. Wien and Mr. Lawrence. It's a valid point. In the framing of everyone's questions today, if we can just make it clear how this relates to what we're studying at hand, I think it would be helpful, and we'll avoid point of order. So, Minister, I'll turn the floor back over to you. And we stopped your time, so you'll have 3 minutes, 10 seconds left.
Thank you.
Okay.
My next question, Minister, is with respect to the crossing. So one of the other concerns I've heard from my residents is that, and people agree, it's a laudable goal to be able to get from Ottawa to Toronto in less than 2 hours. That's great. But their concerns are the fact that they are now going to have their communities bisected by this high-speed rail, where now there will be students that will be separated from their classrooms, workers that will be separated from their offices, farmers separated from their fields, and patients, perhaps most troubling, separated from their hospitals. What guideline or restrictions are you putting on Alto in terms of how long between crossings?
So I want to sort of start at the beginning here and say that the first and most important thing is we're talking about a 60-meter maximum wide corridor. Maps have been published, obviously, to be able to study options on the entire alignment, right from Quebec City to Toronto. Consultations are happening as we speak to get community voices involved to deal exactly with the kind of thing, Mr. Lawrence, that you're discussing. It's just, we need a crossing here. We need a livestock accommodation here. We don't want to split this field in two. So it's exactly that kind of anecdotal and other data that Alto is looking for. We're obviously very well aware of the concerns, the kind that you're raising. I can't answer for every spot along the alignment of a 1,000+ kilometer linear project, but what I can say is that we will be very sensitive, and those who have those kinds of concerns or questions, I would direct them to the Alto consultation currently occurring so that their voices may be heard. And if you specifically have those who are expressing those things to you, send them to us, and we'll aim to get them satisfaction.
I don't mean to interrupt here, but just specifically what my concerns, and quite frankly, right along Eastern Ontario, is that quite a few of the hospitals and other infrastructure are located around the 401 corridor, and people from north of where the projected line of, regardless of whether it was even just a meter, the fact that there's no crossing means instead of it taking you 20 minutes to get to hospital, it's now going to take you, it could be an hour or 2 hours. So we really do need information on that. Our residents do as soon as possible.
Both you and I are probably very eager to land on the final alignment. The reason why this phase that we're going through is important, and I understand that it raises concerns in some places, is to hear exactly those stories. Where access to hospitals, where access to fields, what agricultural operations is it important that we not affect, and so on. So this is why we have
one quick question.
We have this process ongoing
before
now.
my time's up, sorry, Minister. But it's been reported that there's going to be financial analysis that you brought in consultants. Will you make that public, and will you commit today to sharing that?
With respect to high-speed rail? Well, look. This is a very transformative, ambitious project, and will require major investments on the part of the Government of Canada. This is a decision that will be made by Parliament, and so Parliament will have all the information that it requires in order to enable itself to make that decision.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, and Department officials for being here. Part of the mandate of this meeting, of course, was to talk about via delays, and so I want to make sure we give a little bit of love to that, because
I was wondering
we haven't done that yet. Well, exactly. So, look, I was on this committee back in January of 2023 when we had severe weather events across the country, and we had an emergency meeting of this committee at that time. And we had the then president of VIA here, and we were shocked to learn that the minister of the day, now that's 5 ministers ago, was not in contact during that moment of national crisis where people were in an egregious situation, stuck on a train for quite a length of time, and there were many issues around that. Now I have faith that would not be the case with you, Mr. Minister. But we did, of course, as you referenced in your opening statement, have additional delays and incidences in 2024. So it's apparent, and it was apparent during those meetings that we had at this committee, that a lot of the lessons from 2023 were not learned, and changes were not made in 2024. And I think that still a lot of doubt remains in terms of delays of trains. We hear that constantly on in the corridor, and while high-speed rail is probably many years off, we I think the timeline is ambitious. So what specifically are you going to do to ensure that this is actually addressed, and that those changes are made and publicly reported?
Smash the like, gang. Hit subscribe.
Reported back to Parliament so we can measure that there's actually been an improvement.
Yeah, look, Via Rail is an important service, and let's agree that the service has not been as customer-friendly, reliable, or as punctual in recent years as it's needed to be. Now, let's also agree, I hope, that we live in a northern country with, sometimes unpredictable weather. We also live with a situation where along many segments of the so-called corridor, VIA shares tracks and in fact does not have priority over those tracks with a railway. And so we, within those constraints, because we certainly want VIA and CN to collaborate to the extent that is possible and make that situation better. But I've made, in no uncertain terms, my expectation clear to the new senior management at Via Rail that this must improve, that customer service, communication with customers must improve, that reliability of service, people want to know that trains are going to depart on time and arrive on time. And everyone understands, you do, I do, Canadians understand that storms happen and freak incidents occur. But beyond that, the things that are controllable, I expect Via Rail to control.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, because that's an important aspect of the ridership on those particular lines, and it isn't just during storms that there's been, fairly well, delay is actually more constant than should be the case. Let me switch back to ports for a moment. Minister, the National Ports Association says that Canada needs greater agility, more flexible financial tools, and streamlined project reviews, and we heard that amplified this morning by the Hamilton Offshore Port Authority, Nanaimo, and Quebec City, amongst others. There was Bill C-33, which, again, 5 ministers ago, was woefully inadequate in terms of addressing some of those particular issues. That died, of course, when the Prime Minister called the election last year. So the industry is still asking for these particular issues to be addressed. So what reforms are you planning to implement so they'll actually get done?
All of them.
Excellent.
All right, gang, we're going to skip over to a more interesting video. Dan Muse just isn't that interesting, right? There's more things to come, and we'll slip right into question period, right in time. This should keep us entertained.
There was a meeting this morning, very early this morning, of the Coalition of the Willing I participated in, including President Zelensky, chaired by President Macron, pardon me, and Prime Minister Starmer. Several things to take from that. First, as I said just at the end, Russia is failing to achieve all of its objectives 4 years into this conflict, 12 years if you include its annexation, its illegal annexation of Crimea. But 4 years on, Russia is failing militarily, strategically, and economically. And we are in it for the long term. Canada and the Coalition of the Willing. And to that end, we will announce shortly, I'm going to announce now, I guess, that we are tightening sanctions, including on the Shadow Fleet, additional 100 vessels in Russia's Shadow Fleet. This is the fleet that effectively facilitates illegal exports of crude oil. So we're tightening that lifeblood from the Russian economy, along with our allies. Also, additional financial sanctions, a lowering of the oil price cap in court.
And we're going to launder another $2 billion to our chick, Chrystia Freeland, that we set up there to deplete your bank accounts and have you pay for it in inflation. That's the plan.
With the EU and the United Kingdom. In addition, $2 billion of additional aid, military aid for Ukraine over the course of the next year. We're announcing that today. The Minister of National Defense will give details. In addition to that, something Ukraine needs, which is 400 armored vehicles. We'll be supplying those in kind.
We need to talk about Jason Kenney, because before Justin Trudeau ever turned the dial up, the machine was already built. From 2008 to 2013, Bathhouse Kenney was Stephen Harper's Minister of Citizenship, Immigration, and Multiculturalism. And this was not paperwork. It was political engineering. He openly argued that the future of conservatism in Canada had to lie through New Canadians. That was the strategy. So he became the point man, relentless outreach, Diwali festivals, Chinese New Year parades, cultural banquets across the country, suburban ridings around Toronto. He was building a new electoral coalition. Inside Ottawa, colleagues gave him the nickname, the Minister for Curry in a Hurry. It was a joke, but it revealed the mission. And while he was building relationships, he was also expanding the system. Immigration levels stayed at record highs. The temporary foreign worker program exploded across major sectors. International student numbers surged, with clearer pathways to permanent residency. Family reunification streams remained elevated. This was not maintenance. This was expansion, a structural redesign of how immigration functioned in Canada. And here is the part almost nobody talks about. Between 2009 and 2012, his department spent roughly $745,000 monitoring ethnic media, not just tracking policy coverage, tracking political sentiment, tracking how Bathhouse Kenny was perceived, weekly ministerial perception charts, monitoring that extended into active election cycles, taxpayer-funded political intelligence. When Trudeau came to power, he did not build a new machine. He stepped on the gas. The systems were built. The incentives were in place. The political model was established. Trudeau accelerated it. But the architecture was already there. And now, today, Bathhouse Kenny talks about control and reform. That is the contradiction. Canada's immigration crisis was not an accident. It was not sudden. It was constructed, strategically, over years, with political intent. And before Trudeau ever accelerated it, the foundation was already poured. You cannot fix a system you helped design.
I didn't get to choose this place. I was born.
Check this out. I put these in order on purpose.
And I can almost take it for granted. And anytime I meet people who got to make the deliberate choice, whose parents chose Canada, I'm jealous, because I think being able to choose it rather than being Canadian by default is an amazing statement of attachment to Canada, which is why I always sort of laugh whenever you see people who are, not many of them, but intolerant or think, oh yeah, no, go back to your own country. Well, no, you chose this country. This is your country more than it is for others, because we take it for granted. We default into this place. And I think understanding that power of building a country that is made of people who chose, or whose ancestors chose, to build a new life here is really, really exciting.
A society has a commonly agreed upon set of beliefs, rules, and laws that are the definition of the society itself. That's what a society is. So you can't have competing. You can't have, gay world and Sharia world living co-equally in a society. That does not happen. It will never happen. You have to pick one. Are we the Sharia society? Are we the party time gay rights society? Like, which one? And you can't face that reality. So you're just sort of snoozing along until the inevitable point where you're going to wake up and be like, my values have no bearing on what our society is anymore, because we've been invaded by other people with a totally different worldview, and they're now in charge. And that day is coming very soon for your country, and maybe it'll improve it. I don't think the UK could be a lot worse than it already is. It's this kind of disgusting, sad, self-hating, suicidal island that was once great. It kills me to see it as a half English person. But that day is coming. It will change. You will either decide to be Western or Eastern. That's a choice that we're all going to face. I don't want to face that choice, but it's being foisted upon us by the architects of mass migration. Sorry.
Research shows that an emotionally present male partner is the single biggest predictor of.
Just in case some people don't know, this is our health minister. She's an Haitian immigrant. That's a lot of syllables squeezed in there. She's a mess. She came in here under the guise of
a happy, marriage. For those reasons, today we are launching a national conversation on men and boys' health. The input we'll gather will shape Canada's first men and boy health strategy to be released later in 2026.
That's some voodoo shit.
Starting today, Canadians can visit canada.ca/healthymen to learn more about the conversation. And beginning March 2nd, all Canadians can submit feedback through an online form on the same website. the online form.
I wonder what would happen if they shut her monitor off. Like, if she wasn't able to read right from the screen, what would this dumb bitch do?
Will remain open until June 1st. We invite everyone to join in on this important conversation.
Is Canada poorer than the U.S. state of Alabama? Good question. That question was at the center of some debate this weekend. It was sparked by a headline in the Globe and Mail. It read, "How Canada Became Poorer Than Alabama." And that article was based on analysis by the IMF, which found Canada's provinces had an average GDP per capita equivalent to Alabama back in 2022, but then that figure shrank over the next 2 years. This whole episode has sparked an awful lot of debate among experts. Some said GDP per capita is a lousy way to measure wealth and prosperity. Economist Jim Stanford with the Center for Future Work wrote, "This far-fetched conclusion reflects deep flaws in the use of per capita GDP as a measure of prosperity and living standards. This simple ratio ignores important issues such as what's included in GDP, who owns it, and how it's distributed." So, how did we get here? And what do you really need to know about the state of Canadian economic growth? Well, for
like
that,
CBC is going to tell you.
Mike Moffat, who joins us now. And Mike, I'm going to ask if Canada's poorer than Alabama. But before we even get there, is that the right question that we should be asking as we're trying to figure out where we are and where we need to be headed?
No, I don't think it is. I think we need to ask ourselves, are we doing better in a more holistic sense? So, not just what GDP tells us, but, quality of life, standard of living, inequality, and so on. And I also think, at the end of the day, we should be asking ourselves, are we doing as well as we could be doing? I think that's the most important part, that I don't think we should be trying to compete with Alabama, but rather, I always saw it in sports. I always wanted to be better today than I was yesterday. And I think Canada should be taking the same attitude. We should be trying to be better than we were last year, not comparing ourselves to one of 50 U.S. states.
And I should note, everybody should go out and read the piece in the Globe. I think it's smart. I think it's a really interesting jumping off point to have a broader conversation about the Canadian economy. And if GDP per capita is the one we're going to use, sure. But the point of it is to have a broader conversation. You looked at a whole bunch of figures. You were tweeting about this over the weekend, not just GDP per capita, measuring, are we better off than we were 20 years ago? And the interesting thing that jumped out to me was the only one that seemed to have improved over the last number of years was, in fact, GDP per capita. Everything else is in pretty precipitous decline.
Yeah, there's this kind of ongoing debate, and I think both sides are somewhat wrong. You've got one side who's very reliant on GDP per capita as their measure of well-being, and GDP per capita is correlated with well-being, but it's not well-being. There are other things to consider. And then you've got another side of the debate who's saying, well, we're actually doing much better than GDP per capita would indicate. I'm kind of taking the other approach and saying, well, actually not so fast. So GDP per capita, we're doing pretty well in, but other indicators such as wealth and income inequality, deaths of despair, and so on, we tend to actually be below the average of kind of Western economies. So, I looked at the UN Human Development Index, which takes into account a variety of different factors. Back in the 1990s, we were consistently in the top 3. We're now down to 16th place in the latest report. There's a World Happiness Report, also a UN initiative. Just a decade ago, we were the 6th best country in the world, according to that. Now we're 18th. And it's not to suggest that, things aren't getting better in some areas, that they are, but rather that other countries are getting better faster. And there are areas like inequality where Canada's performance has deteriorated over the last decade or two.
And I think as we saw this weekend's debate, mostly on Twitter, but I was having it at sort of with friends as well. Everybody likes to point at their favorite hobby horse. Some say this is all Justin Trudeau's fault and it's completely the result of him. Others are pointing at Trump, saying it's all completely because of him. Neither of those are true, according to the research you did. This decline predates both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. That we've been falling in these rankings for about 20 to 30 years. And, I think it's a combination of things that, we have 3 orders of government in Canada. They could all be doing better. I think we need to look at the higher education system where I've spent my life. I know we could be doing things better. The business community, I think, has room for improvement. So, I hope that we take this not as kind of a finger pointing exercise, but kind of looking at it and go, yeah, you know what? Things aren't, as good as they could be. Our
These
kids
liberals. Mr. Mazier pointed out that in 2016, the cost of this program was $86 million. And this year, according to your projections, the cost will be $1 billion. So that's more than a 10 times increase in just 10 years. Looking at that myself, I'm new to government, but even in terms of government standards, I would use adjectives like runaway, unsustainable, reckless. What words would you use to describe that sort of cost increase over 10 years based on your experience in government?
Oh, I think we've used quite a few words in the report. In the English version, there are about 1,800 words that we've used to explain it. And the French version, there's like close to 2,000 words. But it is something I mentioned at other committees. It is a very challenging fiscal time for the federal government and for Canadians. There's an affordability crisis. And the government, as part of Budget 2025, has a plan to cut $60 billion worth of spending and lay off 40,000 public servants. And as part of Budget 2025, they're also looking at this program as well. So obviously the government potentially shares some of your concerns about the need to slow the growth in spending in this specific area.
Thank you. I definitely hope that that is the case. This past December, Global News reported that Canadian Border Services Agency was doing an extortion investigation and found 15 individuals that they were investigating for deportation because they were engaged in the violent crime of extortion. Immediately after that investigation.
All right. Like many of us probably saw that already. We're going to
position is saying, in fact, the initial program authority of $1.7 billion was intended to be used to kickstart the first phase. In fact, the program is under budget. And great news, Mr. Speaker, 7 million Canadians have transitioned to this new system. The system was 60 years old. Can you imagine that, Mr. Speaker? Paper applications being filed, lots of mistakes. And Mr. Speaker, this is going to make life easier for all seniors going forward. If the member opposite has some urgent case that they know of, please send them our way. We're able to process those in 24 hours. Yep.
Yet another scandal, Mr. Speaker. After the Phoenix scandal, Liberal incompetence has reached new heights, the highest heights in the CURAM file. The CURAM software is a federal version of Quebec's SACLIC. The bill for this IT project will come to $6.6 billion, and more than half of that amount will go to consultants who get away with delays, failures, and cost overruns without any consequences. Mr. Speaker, while Canadians are struggling, public money is being thrown out the window. Why are cost overruns part of Liberal DNA? Mr. Speaker, the question was a bit funny or entertaining, but this question has been asked many times and answered many times. The answer is there was no cost overrun. Over 7 million Canadians are benefiting from the new software, and it's a success, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Côte-du-Sud, Rivière-du-Loup, Katascomique, Témiscouata. Well, we thought we had seen it all with Phoenix and Arrive Can, but now CURAM has surpassed even Quebec.
Just hang with me for a moment. We'll get one more video that's interesting to play, and then we're going to jump over to the House. We're going to see what's going on there. I find this is a pretty interesting piece. This is Shannon Souths from 2021. She had a crystal ball.
There's just a couple of issues I guess I want to clarify. You do keep comparing yourself to other social media platforms and tech companies. I think the key difference is every single one of those platforms explicitly ban the content that you profit from. Now, so there's that issue. I also find it shocking that you would come to this public committee after now it has been in public, and we as members of parliament know without a shadow of a doubt that content of child sexual abuse material and non-consensual material and human trafficking material has been present on at least one of your at least 48 subsidiaries. like how it could be that you could come to this committee and not actually know your terms of reference, and not be able to answer those questions is just mind-boggling to me. So I guess I have a few more questions about your moderation and your content. So you've said that you have MindGeek moderators, which we actually understand are called content formatters, which turns one's stomach, doesn't it? You've said those content formatters view and approve every single video and approve each piece of content. So do you agree that MindGeek content formatters viewed and approved every example of child abuse and non-consensual content?
Thank you for the question, Mrs. Stubbs. I just kind of want to go back and make one quick correction. Many of the main social media platforms that people daily use, such as Twitter and Reddit, and others that I don't know all of them.
Can you just answer my question?
I'm just trying to answer all the different topics that you brought up during thing, and I want to just correct things that I believe are incorrect.
Okay.
Twitter and Reddit also allow for adult content, and we don't really have a gauge whether there's more there than there is on our sites. As for the content
But
formatters,
adult content, I guess, is...
That is correct. They have more. They allow adult content on all of those platforms. So they're all and I'm not trying to at all paint a bad picture of those companies. I think they're both good companies, but I believe they face a lot of the challenges that we do. In regards to the content formatters versus compliance, I believe I addressed this, and I'll revisit it again now.
Mr. Corey, welcome. And thank you for being here. And I take note of your comments that you've invested about $18 billion, according to your website, $17.9 billion, and you've got terms out potentially for another $10 billion. So out of a $35 billion allocation, you've allocated 18, and you might allocate 10 more. And yet the government has come and given you $10 billion more in this allocation for your needs or your wants down the road here about what you want to do to move forward an agenda that, can we say, might not be working, and I'll ask you some questions on that. But $18 billion, is this reflected anywhere in the government's deficit, first of all?
So, thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair. The way the CIB works, as the member points out, the CIB receives the allocation, the appropriation from government. As we make loans, we draw on our appropriation and loan that money to borrowers, and then we get paid back over time. The long-term fiscal impact of this should be, in our modeling, positive for the country.
If I can just quickly move there. If you were to do an audit of your investments right now, how many of them, of the $18 billion you've put out, would you have $18 billion of assets if they were accounted for on a valuation basis at this point in time?
Thank you for the question. So in our current, interesting question, in our current modeling, when you net three things, our investments minus all of our operating costs historically to date, minus any losses on loans for projects that have had challenges or risk, plus the interest we've currently accrued, our $18 billion, using round numbers, Madam Chair, would be something in the range, I believe, of $17.8 billion, so slightly below. When you forecast the interest to be earned from all of the existing loans, though, we are growing that portfolio, and our financial audited statements would show that over time we will be positive to the fiscal plan.
Let me ask about some in particular here, and let's go into your government. This last week gave another $1.5 billion. I presume that's on top of the $10 billion for your electrification network strategy. But you've already been involved heavily in.
All right, gang, we're going to cross over to the question period now. I think that we have that ready to go. So, always with a liberal, always with a liberal. We'll start out there.
Bravo. The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, today I would like to highlight an initiative in my riding to better inform citizens about fraud and cybercrime. a reality that directly affects many families. Between 2020 and 2024, more than 2,100 incidents of fraud were reported in the riding, according to the data from the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. The most common types of fraud are identity theft, extortion, theft of personal information, and phishing. Financial losses have risen significantly, reaching nearly $3.5 million in 2024, illustrating the scale of the problem. Given these worrying figures, I felt it was essential to provide citizens with clear, local, and concrete information, along with simple tips on how to better protect themselves, particularly when using debt and credit cards and debit and credit cards, and dealing with online fraud. The response from my fellow citizens has been very positive. Several told me that the information was useful and relevant and that it helped them better understand the risks and take preventive measures. Seniors and families are better informed and more confident. This initiative demonstrates that accessible information backed by local data can really make a difference. The Honourable Member for Laval-Les-Îles. Mr. Speaker, February is the 30th anniversary of Black History Month. This year's theme is Generations Legacy Through Time. To that end, I'd like to acknowledge the role played by Madame Althea Seaman, originally from Dominica. She was a true pioneer in Laval's Black community, having been part of one of the first families to settle in our region, in the 1970s. In 1983, Madame Seaman created the Ligue des Noirs de Laval Black League, to build a network of solidarity and promote cultural exchanges. Over time, she became an ambassador for the relationship between the French-speaking and English-speaking Black communities. Dear Madame Seaman, the House of Commons today salutes your resilience, your legacy, your courage, and your contributions.
The Honourable Member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington, Tyendinaga.
February is Heart Month, a time to focus on the health of our own hearts and to stand in solidarity with families affected by heart conditions, including congenital heart defects. It is a reminder that heart health begins with everyday choices. Small, consistent steps can play a powerful role in prevention and long-term wellness. At the same time, we recognize those affected by congenital heart defects. Medical advances have transformed survival and the quality of life, yet many families still navigate complex surgery, specialized care, and lifelong monitoring. We also honor those families who have experienced the heartbreak of losing a child due to these conditions.
That's right.
Let us embrace both prevention and advocacy, caring for our own hearts while championing those whose path began with unique challenges. With knowledge, healthy living, and collective resolve, we can stand beside one another, honor every family's story, and together work towards healthier hearts for all.
Great job. The Honourable Member for Scarborough Agincourt.
Mr. Speaker, this month, East and Southeast Asian communities in Canada and around the world are celebrating Lunar New Year, one of the most important traditions across many cultures. 2026 marks the year of the fire horse, a rare occurrence that comes just once every 60 years. The horse symbolizes energy, determination, and freedom. The fire element is said to amplify these traits, bringing passion, intensity, and transformative momentum to the year ahead. Yesterday, I welcomed members of Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, and Filipino communities to Parliament Hill to celebrate this special occasion. Thank you to my colleagues who made the event special. Lunar New Year concludes with the Lantern Festival on March 3rd. May the light from the lanterns bring health, happiness, and prosperity to all. Sing Nan Kwai Le, San Hei Bok Mano Badiseo, Chok Mong Nam Moi, Yun Shu Jit Phai Lo.
The Honourable Member for Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, two-tiered healthcare policies that reward non-citizens who have no legal right to be here, rejected asylum seekers, is unfair to everyone. That's why Conservatives have proposed an opposition motion to restrict health benefits to failed asylum claimants to emergency life-saving care. It's not fair to anyone to have taxpayers paying for premium benefits like vision care and physiotherapy for failed asylum claimants, while Seniors in Kitchener have a hard time getting home care or nursing care, while people across Canada are struggling with their mental health and need the supports they need, and while disabled persons are living in poverty. It's time to restore fairness to Canada's healthcare system. I encourage all people in this House to support our motion. Thank you.
L'honorable député de...
The honourable member for Pierre Boucher, les Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, I would like to highlight the 70th anniversary of the Montreal Police Voice Symphony, La Fraternité des Policiers et Policières de Montréal. Since 1956, this unique choir, composed exclusively of active and retired police officers, has been warming hearts with the power of its voices and the depth of its commitment. For 7 decades now, it has carried music as a language of unity, emotion, and friendship. Over the years, the Vocal Symphony has given numerous performances for community organizations and events, in seniors' residences, at formal or festive ceremonies, and at the funerals of members of the police service. I'd like to highlight specifically the remarkable contribution of musical director Roland Côté and pianist Denise Roux, whose passion and professionalism have shaped the excellence of this ensemble. As it enters its 70th year, I offer my congratulations and best wishes for a long life to the Symphonie Vocale de la Fraternité des Policiers de Montréal.
Mr. Speaker, Black History Month is not only a time to look back, it's a call to build forward. As we mark 30 years of its recognition in Canada, we are reminded that celebrating Black excellence must go hand in hand with expanding opportunities. This year's theme, Nation Builders to Tomorrow's Visionaries, speak to the continuum. The entrepreneurs, the community leaders, the advocates shaping our economy today are laying the foundation for the next generation. This is what this Saturday in Pickering, Brooklyn, we will gather for our Black Entrepreneurship Forum, a space dedicated not only to dialogue, but to connection, capital, and concrete opportunity. With the participation of the Secretary of State for Small Business, the focus will be clear, ensuring Black-owned businesses can access the tools they need to grow, scale, and thrive. Together, through partnership and purposeful investment, we honor those who build before us and empower those.
Sit down.
The honourable member for York Centre.
Speaker, Toronto area home builders report the worst January on record since 1981. Last month, only 269 new homes were sold in the city of Toronto. The slump in new home sales has lasted longer than the downturn of the 1990s. Because of these Liberals, the dream of home ownership is gone for many Canadians. Now, we already know that the Liberal housing plan is dead on arrival. That's because, according to CMHC, new housing starts will drop every year for the next 3 years. But instead of getting government out of the way to build new homes, the Liberals are building a fourth government housing agency. Count them. The Ministry of Housing, CMHC, Canada Lands, and now Build Canada Homes, a fourth bureaucracy to employ Liberal cronies. Instead of building another government agency, the Liberals can adopt our Conservative plan. Take the GST off on all new construction and for all new home buyers so Canadians can afford to buy a home.
The honourable member, Quebec Centre. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From February 14th to the 22nd, the entire city of Quebec City will be buzzing with excitement for the Sun Life Snow Pentathlon, Canada's largest winter sporting event. For so many years now, we have seen so many volunteers, solid partners involved in this event. I specifically want to focus on Alex Hervé and Lynn Bessette, a former colleague and representative MP for Brome-Missisquoi. I'm also proud of Economic Development Canada and that it's been supporting the pentathlon for many years by contributing to its efforts throughout the country. And in closing, a heartfelt thank you to Jean-Charles Ouellet, the founder of the pentathlon, who was actually also my high school phys ed teacher, who I must say has continued to inspire our entire community.
The honourable member for Fort McMurray Cold Lake.
57% of millennials say they have little to no money left over after paying monthly bills, according to the 2026 RBC Financial Independence poll. That's more than a statistic. It's a giant blaring warning signal. Young Canadians aren't just postponing vacations or cutting back on luxuries. Many are struggling to put food on the table, let alone save for their future. The Liberals blame global events for rising food prices, yet 70% of the food we eat is produced right here in Canada. So it's excessive regulation, inflationary spending, and the industrial carbon tax driving up costs here at home across the entire supply chain, costs that are passed on to Canadians. This is a made-in-Canada problem, and food prices have risen more than twice as fast as our overall goods. Every trip to the grocery store is a reminder that something just isn't working. How expensive does food have to get before the Liberals stop strangling Canadian food production and red tape and punishing taxes?
The honourable member for Eglinton Lawrence.
Mr. Speaker, I want to recognize students from Lawrence Heights Middle School who are joining us in Ottawa from my riding of Eglinton Lawrence. At a time when our country needs engaged young people more than ever, it is inspiring to see students who are civically engaged and eager to learn about our democratic institutions. Thank you, Principal Stewart, for your leadership and for fostering a strong culture of civic education. To the students visiting from Lawrence Heights, I hope this experience inspires many of you to one day serve our community. The students will be celebrating Black History Month with the Children's Breakfast Club. Members are welcome to attend at 4 p.m. in room 330 of the Wellington Building. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Fraudulent and rejected asylum claims are straining a healthcare system that millions of Canadians cannot fully access. The interim federal health program costs have more than quadrupled in 4 years, from $211 million to $896 million, and they're projected to reach $1.5 billion by 2029. Now, at committee, we learned providers are billing taxpayers up to 5 times the provincial rate for services to rejected claimants. Wow. Meanwhile, some 6 million Canadians lack a family doctor, yet failed claimants have supplementary benefits, including vision care, benefits that many Canadians must pay for out of pocket. This is neither fair nor sustainable. Now, Conservatives are calling for limiting benefits to rejected claimants for emergency and life-saving care only. We're calling for full annual transparency to Parliament and the immediate removal of foreign nationals convicted of serious crimes. Now, Canada is a compassionate country, but it must first be fair to its own citizens. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear. The honourable member for Etobicoke Centre.
Today marks 4 years since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The Ukrainian people have been outmanned and outgunned, but they've shown tremendous courage in defending their homeland. Unable to win on the battlefield, Russia has resolved to pursue war crimes, including most recently trying to destroy the power grid to freeze millions of Ukrainians into surrender. They will never surrender, but they need our help. For me, Speaker, there are 2 reasons we support Ukraine. The first is it is the right thing to do. It is the moral thing to do. And the second reason is because it is the right thing for Canada. If Russia wins, it will not stop at Ukraine, and NATO countries will be next. And we know this because Vladimir Putin has told us so. That's why Ukraine's victory is vital to Canada's security. Now, Canada's been a global leader in supporting Ukraine since 2022 with over $25 billion in support, and I know that under the Prime Minister's leadership, that support will continue. The Ukrainian people are not only fighting for their own freedom and security, they're also fighting for ours, and we need to fight for them until they win, until we all win. Slava Ukraini.
Oral questions, questions orales. The honourable leader.
Mr. Speaker, Quebecers are fed up with Liberal waste. This Liberal Prime Minister has made inflation increase and double the debt. And now we're seeing the waste, just like with ArriveCan and We Charity. We're seeing this waste with Curram. Under this Liberal government, 85,000 seniors are not getting their checks. And yet the Liberal governments are saying this is good news? Does the Prime Minister agree with its House Leader that wasting money and depriving seniors of their checks is a piece of good news? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I would like to recognize that today is the 4th anniversary of the beginning of the unjustified and horrifying war that Russia launched against Ukraine. Canada stands with Ukraine. We are providing more humanitarian and military aid today. And regarding the Leader of the Opposition's question, to my knowledge, the Curram process started in 2017. The project, was broadened to other services like OAS.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, this Liberal government wasted $5 billion in cost overruns. And today, when this Prime Minister is in power, 85,000 seniors are not getting their checks. They cannot put food on the table. The Prime Minister has doubled the deficit, saying he didn't have enough money, but apparently he had enough to waste $5 billion. What will the Prime Minister do to put an end to this Liberal scandal, protect taxpayers, and ensure that our seniors will get the money? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as I just said, the former government began this project with OAS, and then we broadened its scope, and we added EI to it, as well as the GIS and other services. All of the sums have been budgeted for, and this project has already been reviewed by the Auditor General.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve good quality health care. But after a decade of this Liberal government, 6 million Canadians do not have a family doctor. Part of the reason is that mass, out-of-control Liberal immigration has overwhelmed the system. And many of those resources are going to people who are here illegally and have been rejected. There has been a 1,000% increase in the cost of providing deluxe benefits to many people who are here illegally. Will the Prime Minister reverse this policy, support our motion, and put Canadians first for health care?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes, Canada is not America. Yes, Canada provides essential health care to everyone in this country. The increase in costs in this program referenced in the opposition motion is a result of the increase in applicants for that program. Now, what has this government done? This government has taken back control of immigration. This government has reduced the number of temporary workers in this country by 50%, the demanders of asylum seekers by 1/3, and we're moderating.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The problem is that this government is not taking care of health care for the Canadian people. 6 million do not have a family doctor. 100,000 people died on waiting lists since the Liberals unleashed out-of-control immigration. There are currently literally thousands of people who are waiting for procedures as we speak. And the Prime Minister claims he's getting it under control, but it's all an illusion. He's just another Liberal. There has been a 3,000% increase in refugee claims under his out-of-control system. Will he rein it in, support our motion, and put Canadians first?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm looking forward to coming up to my 1-year anniversary as Prime Minister.
Hear, hear.
During that time, new asylum claims have gone down by 1/3. During that time, temporary students have gone down by 60%. During that time, temporary workers have gone down by 50%. We have the immigration system under control, and we're supplying the health care Canadians.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
has the system under control? Obviously, he's just another Liberal. He thinks it's under control when the cost of deluxe supplementary benefits is up by 1,000%, and the number of refugee claims is up by 3,000%. Meanwhile, under his leadership, and after 11 years of Liberal government, we have 6 million Canadians who cannot find a family doctor. Will he take his head out of the stand, vote for our motion, and give Canadians back the health care they deserve?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, 11 years? I just got here. The member opposite has been here his whole...
I just want to remind. I just want to remind the member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman that there is only one person who should be standing at a time in this house. But anyway, the Right Honourable Prime Minister will need to start from the top.
Mr. Speaker, I just got here. The Leader of the Opposition has been here his entire career, with one exception. Now, during the time that Canada's new government has been here, we have reduced asylum seekers by 1/3. We have reduced temporary foreign workers by 50%. We have reduced new students by 60%. And we are putting in place, in front of this House, in C12 and C2, an ability to end the abuse of the asylum system. We look for their support.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister may pretend he just got here like he's a temporary foreign worker or something, but in reality, it's the same Liberal House Leader, the same Liberal Finance Minister, the same Liberal Justice Minister who was the Immigration Minister that broke the entire system that are running it into the ground today. And it's not just health care where there's two-tiered, Mr. Speaker. This Prime Minister keeps in place laws that allow foreign criminals who are visiting Canada to have less time in jail after they commit crimes. Will he get rid of the two-tiered system so that we can lock up serious criminals and then kick them out of our country when they're done their time?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I would encourage, in the spirit of the member's opposite question, support for C2 and C12, which will help to address some of these issues. That's the first point. The second point, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, when someone commits a crime in this country, they should serve the time in this country.
Hear, hear. L'honorable député de Belleuil-Chambly.
The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the sponsorship scandal cost around $330 million. The Quebec-Saclay scandal, $1.1 billion. The infamous Phoenix, which is still not over, $5.1 billion. And Curram has now gone from $1.6 billion to $6.6 billion. Is the Prime Minister proud of presiding over the worst financial scandal in the history of Canada? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the project started in 2017. At that time, I was the Governor of the Bank of England, number one. Number two.
Ouais, on y va. Tous les montants a été.
All of the money was budgeted for, including the $6 billion.
Député de Belleuil-Chambly.
The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly. Oh, it's not my fault, Mr. Speaker. Well, in 2019, the Bloc Québécois asked for there be a purchasing power adjustment for retirees. And then after that, there was the pandemic and post-pandemic inflation, which made it even harder for retirees to make ends meet. Also discrimination between retirees over 75 and under. And now we have CURM, which is causing 85,000 retirees to have errors with their checks. Does this Prime Minister realize that his government has mistreated retirees? I'm sure there are retirees in Talbot who are wondering that. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we have strengthened Quebec's healthcare system, number one. Number two, we have strengthened the dental care system in Quebec. We have strengthened pharmacare rather, in Quebec.
L'honorable député de Belleuil-Chambly.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, because CURM is the biggest financial scandal in the history of Canada, because retirees' purchasing power has been going down since these Liberals, these or the others, they're all the same. Given that this is the case, will this Prime Minister, who says it's not his fault, will he at least cast light on the CURM scandal and call for an independent inquiry, just like all the others had their own scandals? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the CURM project has already been reviewed by the Public Accounts Committee and by the Auditor General. Both of them have reviewed the project. Everything has been budgeted for. Period.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
We need to restore order and fairness in Canada's immigration system. Conservatives have a clear proposal to end the two-tier healthcare system where failed asylum claimants get access to premium healthcare while Canadians who have paid into the system wait in overcrowded emergency rooms. There is no reasonable justification to oppose fairness for Canadian taxpayers. So why are the Liberals voting to protect a system that puts failed claimants ahead of Canadians?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, it is very interesting to us. The Prime Minister outlined all of the ways in which temporary Canadians, asylum seekers, and others, those levels are going down and going down quickly. But it's very interesting to us that after a week away to lick their wounds, the Conservatives returned to Parliament and punched down at some of the most vulnerable people in this world, including, on this most solemn of anniversaries, an amputee child from Ukraine who comes seeking health care in Canada, that they would deny that person.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Calling anybody who questions anything about them names again. In just 10 years, the cost of health care for asylum seekers skyrocketed to $60 million to over $1 billion. That's a 1,500% increase. They can't run away from that. Legitimate refugees deserve protection. That's not the issue here. But failed asylum claimants should not receive premium coverage, while 6 million Canadians cannot find a family doctor and are waiting 12 hours in an emergency room. So I'll ask again, will they restore order and fairness into the system?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, failed asylum claimants are not granted asylum and therefore cannot stay in Canada. The Conservatives need to stop punching down at the world's most vulnerable people. That's right. There are legitimate claimants, legitimate refugees on Canadian soil, including people fleeing the war in Ukraine, the anniversary of which we are marking today, and they should be ashamed of themselves for picking on the most vulnerable people on the planet.
The Honourable Member for Riding Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, 6 million Canadians don't have a family doctor, and the average wait time to see a specialist is around 30 weeks. Yet the Liberals keep rejected asylum claimants, people their own refugee board has rejected, fully enrolled in a program with premium health benefits on the same wait list as those Canadians. Does the health minister believe asylum claimants that her own government rejected should be in the same lines as Canadians and genuine refugees? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Citizenship, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we are focused on strengthening our immigration system and building Canada strong. If the Conservatives were really serious about health care, they would support our investments in hospitals. They would support dental care. They would support pharmacare. They would support the immigration program that I just announced and under Global Talent. And last week, the first physicians, surgeons were picked under that program to care for Canadians and everyone in Canada.
The Honourable Member for Riding Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, if the Liberals actually cared about genuine refugees, they wouldn't force them to wait in the same healthcare lines as fake asylum claimants. They wouldn't force them to wait in the same backlog as claimants who this government rejected. But they do, and they refuse to fix it. Will the health minister explain to those genuine refugees why rejected claimants are ahead of them on healthcare wait lists?
The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, thank you for that question. We have a robust immigration system. Our system works. We have an IRB board that handles claim. Those that are inadmissible and ineligible are not going to the board. They are ruled out. Those that clearly fit in the system are in there. And we will continue to honor our humanitarian, constitutional, and international obligations.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Montmorency Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, the Interim Federal Health Program is a taxpayer-funded program that covers health care for asylum seekers and some other non-citizens at a time when 6 million Canadians do not have a family doctor. And when our system is overwhelmed, we have learned that non-citizens and non-permanent residents can receive benefits that are more generous than those offered to Canadians and Quebecers. This is a matter of fairness. Will the government support our motion to guarantee that non-residents and non-citizens do not get better health care than Canadians? The Honourable Minister of Immigration. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What my colleague said is not true. It is totally untrue. We are strengthening our borders, and we are making it harder for those who wish to abuse our system. We have reduced asylum claims by 30% last year. And C12, which we have adopted, will improve our systems. We are here to work for all Canadians, all Quebecers, and people in every province, including people who really need our help. The Honourable Member. Well, indeed. The Minister mentioned Canadians. Listen. Canadians and Quebecers are the ones who should be getting health care and quality health care, and we should ensure that non-citizens are not getting better health care. We also learned that certain health care providers are offering up to 5 times the amount set by the provincial rates under the Interim Federal Health Program. And we have projections that show that the situation is going to get worse by 2030. Will the government support our motion to prioritize Canadians and Quebecers? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we will never endanger the health and security of Canadians. Our program will ensure that all Canadians are safe. We will continue to work hard, and we hope the Conservatives will support us in order to help Canadians, including Quebecers.
Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, interim federal health program costs have quadrupled in 4 years.
providers are billing up to 5 times the provincial rates for care to rejected asylum claimants. Meanwhile, folks in Oshawa are waiting for care. They can't find a doctor and access to benefits like vision care, physiotherapy, and counseling, despite paying into the system their whole lives. So, rejected claimants are receiving better health benefits than Canadians. Will the Liberals help us make this right and support our Conservative motion that preserves fairness and compassion?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Mr. Speaker. You know what? The real question is, will the Conservatives stop voting against investments in health care? Will the Conservatives stop voting against things like a national dental care plan, Mr. Speaker, that's deeply connected to the health of Canadians? Mr. Speaker, I agree with my colleague. The Conservatives are punching down on the most vulnerable Canadians, and I will say this, we are all in this together. Canadians are united in ensuring that we have a universal health care system that is there for you regardless of your ability to pay.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Mr. Speaker, 85,000 retirees have experienced errors with their OAS checks because of the current software. And taxpayers are paying for $5 billion in cost overruns. But according to the Liberals, this is good news for Canada. Retirees who are struggling, again according to the Liberals, represent a success story. The Liberals are saying we should celebrate this. Are the Liberals saying that seniors who've been waiting for their pension for 9 months have nothing to complain about?
Very distant past. In fact, they prefer benefits to be administered on a 60-year-old system using paper and hand administrated. But that's not what this government has decided to do. We're continuing on the modernization of benefits for all Canadians. This number that the Bloc Québécois continue to use is misleading to Canadians. In fact, it is a sum for the modernization of 3 major pension programs, Mr. Speaker. It is the sum that is invested in Canadians' ability to get their benefits online, in time, and in the modern world.
The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, retirees who've been waiting for their pension for 9 months would love to celebrate with the Liberals, but they can't because they have no money left. And taxpayers would love to celebrate, but when they think of everything we could have done with that $5 billion wasted on software problems, they just don't feel like celebrating. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals won't fix the current problems because in their minds, the problem doesn't even exist. Am I making it clear why we absolutely need an arm's-length inquiry? The Honourable Secretary of State, Seniors.
I want to be perfectly clear. $1.5 billion has been spent to date. This covers completion of the old age security transformation and development of initial development for employment insurance. $6.6 billion is an upper ceiling for all of the projects that this covers. This amount may never be spent. And this would have been cheaper if it had been undertaken between 2005 to 2015 when the Conservatives were in power and they knew that the tech was from 1966. My mother was only 10 years old. Let me be perfect.
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, 10 years ago, we had a stable immigration system that Canadians were proud of. Now, the Liberals have automated approvals and abandoned security checks from certain countries. People can enter Canada, make a claim for asylum, and receive approval in the mail without even talking to a government official. It's auto approval. And the countries listed will shock you. Iran is on the list, which encourages senior members of the dreaded IRGC to seek refuge here, all with no security checks. Why did this government, including the current Minister of Justice, remove safeguards on Canada's refugee system?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, when you have a series of questions like this that have come on the floor of the House of Commons this week, you have to invite yourself into the conversations that the Conservative Party must have had as they were getting ready. You can imagine them all sitting around saying, what are we going to prioritize this week to help us raise some money? Well, could we tackle perhaps the Canada-U.S. relationship? No, that's just going to upset our members who think Canadians are having a hissy fit. Could we tackle affordability for families? No, that goes against type. Could we do health care? Sure, health care, but let's make sure we do it in a way that helps no one. Punching down by demonizing refugees, saying you're going to cut health care is a blatant political opportunity, not something that's going to help a single person in this country.
The honourable member for Abbotsford South Langley.
Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff, the current Justice Minister, and the member for York Southwest and Etobicoke ran the immigration file, their reckless policies broke our asylum system, overwhelming it to the point that the Immigration and Refugee Board were forced to gut critical safeguards just to keep up. Nearly 25,000 individuals were admitted to Canada without a single in-person interview. Why did the Liberals dismantle our critical safeguards for our refugee system and put Canadian lives at risk?
Absolutely. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, the translation has been difficult to hear over the anti-refugee dog whistle that's been coming through the air in this chamber all afternoon. We are talking of people who are fleeing violence, war, and persecution. Do you not remember the images of the people who died who washed up on the shore? Alan Kurdi from Syria. Have you not sat down with members of the Ukrainian community who have found safe haven in Canada? Have you not had the opportunity to speak with the Afghans?
No, again, I know the Honourable Minister knows this. It's through the chair. It's through the chair. The Honourable Member may, if the noise level drops, maybe the Honourable Member could continue.
Mr. Speaker, let me flip this around. I know that you've had the opportunity to meet with families from Syria because we've worked together during the effort. I know that you've had the opportunity to meet with Afghans who have served alongside the Canadian Armed Forces, and I know that you have supported Ukrainians finding safe haven in Canada, fleeing Putin's war of aggression.
The Honourable Member for Windsor West.
Mr. Speaker, under this government, the asylum system has become so overwhelmed that the Immigration and Refugee Board eliminated key safeguards. Nearly 25,000 claims are approved without an in-person interview, and in some cases, decisions were issued without a direct conversation with an official, which is ridiculous. These policies were put in place when senior members of this government were responsible for the file. The Immigration Minister must explain why these safeguards were removed. Are they not concerned about the safety of Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, in my role, I have the privilege of speaking with leaders and citizens around this world, and I repeatedly hear that countries respect and want to emulate the immigration system in this country. In addition, I would ask the opposition to vote with us on Bill C-12. This is a reform to strengthen our asylum system. We've also recently announced changes to the interim health care program by introducing certain services relating to co-payment. These are responsibly, fiscally important moves.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
I want to go back to something that the government House Leader and the Justice Minister said. Since 2020, 86% of failed asylum claimants are still in Canada, and 100% of those people are receiving taxpayer-funded benefits that are better than most Canadians receive, like vision care and physiotherapy. How is it punching down to ask that we restore fairness by limiting the benefits of failed asylum claimants to emergency life-saving care?
The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees
and
Citizens.
This
Thank you very
retard.
much, Mr. Speaker. This
She
new
wore her
government
Spanx on the outside.
takes these
She wore her Spanx on the outside, guys.
issues very seriously. That is exactly why our mandate was to restore immigration, to strengthen our immigration system. And yes, I agree with the Foreign Affairs Minister. Our system is the envy of the world. And we are proud of the system that we have. We have curbed the asylum by 1/3. We have introduced measures to bring physicians, healthcare workers, global talent, work with us.
The honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
The Justice Minister just dismissed the fact that the Liberals are rubber stamping and approving asylum claims from Iran without an in-person interview. This is the type of sloppy, far-left Liberal garbage that has undermined Canada's consensus for immigration and made it harder for millions of people.
I don't know if we'll find that word on a list of I'm not sure that word falls on an official list of unparliamentary language, but anything that creates disorder is unparliamentary. So I'll ask the honourable member to continue, but please do not use incendiary language.
Mr. Speaker, the Justice Minister made light of the crisis that Canada's immigration system is facing in Canada right now. I have to ask the Immigration Minister this. How does she feel about having to clean up the mess of a man who made the mess and failed upwards in this government?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Here, here. Mr. Speaker, throughout question period and throughout the debate in the House today, we've heard immigrants and refugee and asylum claimants be linked to criminals, be told that their claims are all bogus. This is false, Mr. Speaker. When someone's case is determined to be invalid, when the process is complete, their work permit is cancelled and so is their health care, Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives are just trying to divide Canadians. They're not trying to improve health care by any means. If they were, they would have voted for dental care. They would not be creating two-tier systems in this in provinces across this country. They're not concerned about
the honourable member for Etobicoke Lakeshore.
Mr. Speaker, today marks the 4th anniversary of Russia's barbaric and illegal invasion of Ukraine. As we sit in this House, our friends in Ukraine continue to make sacrifices as they bravely fight for their freedom. Can the Minister of Foreign Affairs share with this House how Canada is working to support Ukraine and Ukrainians in their time of need?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, on this 4th anniversary of the illegal further invasion by Russia of Ukraine, Canada continues to stand with Ukraine in the short and the long term. This morning, I announced $20 million in supports for Ukraine's energy infrastructure. In addition, this brings our total investments for Ukraine and supports to $25.5 billion. Mr. Speaker, Canada stands with Ukraine and makes sure that we are there with our allies so Ukraine can fight and win this war. Slava Ukraini.
The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, young people in Canada today are worse off than their parents' generation. They can't find jobs, they can't afford homes. The pain that young people face is leading to delayed family formation and to increasing hopelessness. Now, an RBC poll out today shows that 2/3 of millennials are anxious about their financial future, and more than half are concerned about current cash flow. It's not like it was 10 years ago. Will Liberals now listen to young people and reverse course on policies that have blocked opportunity for the next generation?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Children and Youth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is there in support of all Canadians, including with a first-time homebuyers tax credit and a number of other measures to increase affordability and build homes at scale. That is just one of the many ways that we are there. We are investing in apprenticeships, in job training, in Canada Summer Jobs. There is a great deal of opportunity and investment, and it would be great to have the Conservatives cease their obstruction, in particular on the National School Food Program.
Look at the size of that Adam's
work
apple.
at committee, which they have continued to filibuster and get on side. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, actually at that committee, Liberals are opposing our efforts to study food inflation, which is more than double what it is in other jurisdictions. And their budget is weakening trading by defunding career colleges. We've put constructive proposals on the table to unleash the economy, to fix immigration, to fix training, and to build homes where the jobs are. Liberals could simply take our good ideas instead of doubling down on failure, defunding students in career colleges and continuing to block development that creates jobs and opportunity. Why are they unwilling to take the solutions we've offered? Why instead are they standing in the way of progress for young people?
Here, here. The Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, we are giving Canadians a boost across this country, up to $12 million with the grocery benefit that will reach families with up to $1,900 this year to give them a boost. I was at the Daily Bread Food Bank in Etobicoke recently, who were very happy about this increased GST rebate, as well as with the National School Food Program that we are using to fight food insecurity. We're investing in greenhouses and a national strategy on food security. Again, it would be great to have the members' collaboration to fight food insecurity together in this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Don't worry, gang. They're investing in you. They're investing now. All that other stuff before. Now they're investing. It's serious.
Mr. Speaker, a recent poll by the Royal Bank of Canada shows 64% of millennials are worried about their future, 57% have little or no money left at the end of the month, and 4 in 10 fear that they will never pay off their debts. In Newfoundland and Labrador, the aspiration of home ownership has been the cornerstone of community stability and has long been within reach. But after 11 Liberal years of rising house costs, inflationary deficits, and higher taxes, young Canadians are being locked out of the dream of home ownership. When will this government finally lower costs and create an economy where young Canadians can afford to live?
Here, here. The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Mr. Speaker, this member likes to stand in the House and talk about what she feels her constituents need. But she actually needs to talk to them and ask if the building houses matter in her riding. Supports for rural communities in her riding matters. $10 a day child care. School food program. These things matter to her members in her riding because they talk to me.
The Honourable Member for Long Range.
They talk to her.
Mr. Speaker, if Liberal programs worked, young Canadians would be getting ahead, not watching the dream of home ownership slip further away. According to CREA, the average sale price in St. John's has increased by nearly 10% from 2024 to 2025. This generation has done everything right. They should be building wealth and home ownership, but instead they're falling further behind and they're losing hope. How much worse does affordability have to get before this government lowers costs and makes it possible for young Canadians to build a future in this country?
Here, here. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to remind this member from Newfoundland and Labrador that she needs to read Budget 2025. Because in that budget, she will notice that there are strong supports for youth across this country and within our province. Opportunities for them to further their education. Programs that build houses, affordable houses in communities. Build this country through major projects that will see young people working and home ownership follows. The member needs to read the budget.
The Honourable Member for New Tecumseh, Gwillimbury.
Mr. Speaker, it's unbelievable. Only 269 new homes were sold in the GTA last month. The worst ever on record for new home sales. But it's not because Canadians don't want to buy, it's because they can't afford the homes being built. The Liberals' failure to address out-of-control immigration, rising inflation, and red tape has resulted in an entire generation being priced out of the market. Why is this government making it so hard for Canadians to afford a home?
The Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is focused on making housing more affordable across the board.
That's right.
Starting with our new home buyers, our first-time home buyers getting a tax break. Build Canada Homes has almost 9,000 homes now in development in cities across the country. Supportive housing was announced last week with BC, 700 homes for those who are at risk of homelessness. Mr. Speaker, we are delivering. We need support on the Build Canada Homes Act from the opposition to go farther.
Honourable member for Nunn-Tecumseh-Gwillimbury.
You're not delivering. Young Canadians are flat broke.
I'm going to take that personally. Through the chair, please.
What?
Mr. Speaker, young Canadians are flat broke and falling behind. 57 are reporting they have no money left at the end of the month. 4 in 10 fear they will never pay off their debt. Mr. Speaker, they literally have one foot in the grave and one on a banana peel. Canadians are draining their savings while their dreams of owning a home, starting a family, and building a secure life have been shattered. Instead of making things even worse, when will this Liberal government lower costs so young Canadians can afford to live?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, that's what Build Canada Homes is all about. We have a plan to deliver. We are delivering, and the experts are weighing in on this. Mr. Speaker, the Canadian Housing and Renewal Association said it clearly. Build Canada Homes is, and I quote, an important step towards addressing the housing crisis, building homes at speed and scale, ensuring affordability, and listening to the community housing sector. Mr. Speaker, we have an opportunity to deliver for Canadians. This whole House should stand in unison to support the Build Canada Homes Act.
The Honourable Member for Richmond.
Look at those sellouts just sitting
The dream
there.
of home ownership has been shattered by a decade of Liberal policies and rhetoric. Only 269 new homes were sold in the entire Toronto area in January. Sales are down 36% from last year and 80% below the 10-year average. The last time it was this bad was the early 1990s. The Prime Minister promised build, baby, build, but the only thing this Liberal government seems able to build is more office space for more bureaucrats, for more layers of bureaucracy. So when will this Liberal government stop obstructing builders, stop doubling down on failed policies, and finally scrap the GST on all new homes?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, this morning we announced a Phase 2 addition of 7,500 new residential units in 25 locations across the country. Already more than 800 new residential housing units are underway. The shovels are in the ground. Valcartier, Petawawa, and Edmonton, 1,000 new units. Kingston, 900 new units. Gagetown, 500 new units. Mr. Speaker, we are delivering for the Canadian Armed Forces, and we're delivering for our economy.
The Honourable Member for Richmond, Arthabaska. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Curam Software. Original budget, $1.6 billion. Actual cost, $6.6 billion. Cost overrun, $5 billion. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the Liberals told us that this is a success story. That's what they said. Who in the Liberal cabinet will step up to take leadership in this fiasco, in this financial fiasco? That's the question. Who will take care of the 85,000 seniors who are waiting for their money? Who? Anyone? That's Liberal leadership for you, Mr. Speaker. No one is dealing with this. The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, my colleague is in the House of Commons because he tried to be an actor, but he failed at that, at drama school. But as we've said, as the other ministers have said,
what?
As all those responsible for this have said,
everything around.
We are replacing outdated technological systems. This system is within budget, and any glitches.
You're outdated, Stephen McKinnon. You are past your time.
Will be fixed, Mr. Speaker. My colleagues are welcome to send me any issues they know of. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent, Akia-Wenrac. Mr. Speaker, 85,000 Canadian seniors are experiencing problems, and for some of them, this is their only source of revenue. This is the problem, Mr. Speaker. There are 85,000 seniors affected, and yesterday the Minister of Transportation said that there were just a few cases. 85,000. A success story, they said. 85,000. This is Liberal arrogance in full display. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is an honourable, very honourable man. So can he rise and admit that they've made a mistake? The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
That the Prime Minister is an honourable man, and that's why I'm so confident to serve under his leadership. And on the issue of Curum, Mr. Speaker, it would be great if we had some honourable conversations about the real facts of this case. In fact, Mr. Speaker, 7.7 million seniors have been transferred to the new system without any delay. And in fact, the number that the opposition keeps repeating are new applicants, Mr. Speaker. We have a process as well for urgent cases. I've asked the member opposite to come to me with those urgent cases, and we can get people their benefits started within 24 to 48 hours. Mr. Speaker, there is
the honourable member for Halifax.
Monsieur le Président, on est tout. Mr. Speaker, all of us in this place agree that tuberculosis rates in Inuit Nunangat and in many First Nations communities are still too high. These rates of tuberculosis reflect historical discrimination and the lasting effects of colonization. Can the Minister of Indigenous Services tell the House what our new government is doing to eliminate tuberculosis by 2030? Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Services. Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for this very important question. In order to eliminate tuberculosis, we are investing in innovative approaches led by Inuit. We are working to improve people's health in the most at-risk communities, and in order to do so, we have just announced additional investment, significant investment, to find solutions to tuberculosis rates in Inuit Nunangat.
With ITK and Inuit treaty organizations to better support prevention, screening, and diagnosis.
The honourable member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Liberal revolving door policies strike again. Today in Toronto, a criminal while out on bail was convicted of stabbing a male 7 times on the subway, causing life-altering injuries and permanent trauma, is now walking free. The judge called him a high risk to reoffend, and now his victim fears for his life. How many more innocent Canadians have to be stabbed, shot, or terrorized before this government stops propping up a broken system and actually starts protecting victims?
The Honourable Secretary of State for combating crime.
Mr. Speaker, cases like this are exactly why we brought in C-14.
That's right.
I'm glad to report that C-14 has passed on to the Senate. The Senate is doing its work. There will be bail reform in that bill. There are harsher sentences for those that commit crimes, and I'm glad that that we'll be able to tackle this issue. Mr. Speaker, my role has been put in place because we are a tough on crime government, and we'll do everything that it takes to make sure we don't have incidents like this.
Honourable member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
The tragic case, Mr. Speaker, is a direct result of Bill C-5 and 7-5 laws that weaken bail, water down consequences, and fueled a revolving door have repeatedly fought to strengthen.
Legislation, Mr. Speaker, justice reform, public safety bills, and many of these measures have moved forward and progressed, but there are some measures that have not moved forward at all because the Conservatives have been obstructing those measures, Mr. Speaker. We need to be able to provide law enforcement with the tools that they need, the advancement that is needed, and lawful access measures are a part of that regime. I would like the Conservatives to work with us, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Kamloops, Thompson, Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, a man was recently sentenced to 2 years less a day for possessing over 2,600 images of child sexual abuse and exploitation material. Let's remember that it is Parliament's jurisdiction to set sentencing ranges, and that is why I put forward a bill last Parliament to raise sentences for those who commit sexual offences against kids. Make no mistake, I believe everybody in this chamber wants to protect children. But if that's the case, will the Liberals commit today as to when they will introduce legislation that will strengthen our sentencing for those who possess these criminal and awful materials?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to answer the honourable member's question directly. It was during the fall sitting last year. We put forward legislation that is going to increase sentences for a range of sexual crimes. And, Mr. Speaker, we are also going to be restoring mandatory minimum penalties, including for child pornography charges following the Senville decision of the Supreme Court. But on this side of the House, we know that it is not enough to punish bad actors after a crime has taken place. That's why I would urge all members of this House to get behind the government's efforts to pass Bill C-2 so we can actually adopt a lawful access regime, give cops the tools they need to put criminals behind bars and keep our kids safe.
The Honourable Member for Labrador.
Mr. Speaker, we know how important it is that Inuit children have timely and equitable access to the health, social and educational supports they deserve. The Inuit Child First Initiative has been instrumental in helping to close long-standing gaps, ensuring that Inuit children are not left behind. Could the Minister of Indigenous Services please update this House on her recent announcement and explain how it will further strengthen supports for Inuit children and families, including those in my own riding of Labrador? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for his question, and I'm really pleased to be able to respond to him in affirming the announcement of $115 million towards renewed funding for the Inuit Child First Initiative that will reach those children and families in his riding and like mine. I want to thank my constituents who expressed their support for this progress. I'm looking forward to continuing to deliver in this space. Of course, we are going to be doing long-term work in partnership with our colleagues to ensure that we are able to determine the future next steps of this process. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, Liberals have shut down the experimental farm in Saint-Augustin-des-Maures and the research centre at Laval University in the riding represented by the Minister of Public Services and Procurement. It is unanimous that this decision will have long-term consequences for our food sovereignty and Canadian expertise. Mr. Speaker, agricultural research funding is already the poor cousin under these Liberals. The Prime Minister has stated that a country that cannot feed itself has limited options. Why is the government not walking the talk?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now more than ever, it's vital we find ways to streamline our services and focus our efforts in the right place, Mr. Speaker. I've had the opportunity to sit down with Laval University and talk about AAFC and the partnerships that we have. Streamlining research and collaboration with academia and the private sector will prioritize our high-impact areas and duplication and align ourselves for the future. We are going to continue to be the biggest science entity in the country, Mr. Speaker, and we will use that to our advantage in our trade negotiations.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, the Canada Health Act guarantees Canadians universal access to public health care. But Danielle Smith is creating a private system that will hollow out health care in Alberta and spread to other provinces, making the crisis across the country even worse. At the same time, Canadians in 9 provinces and territories still have no access to national pharmacare, and the health minister won't even meet with the Canadian Health Coalition to talk about it. Is the Prime Minister deliberately letting Canadian health care erode, or does he simply not care enough to protect it?
Here, here.
L'Honorable Ministre.
The Honourable Minister for Health. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As my colleague knows, I will always stand up for, and my government will always stand up for, the Canada Health Act. We're working closely with our partners, provinces and territories, as I often say, and we work together to ensure the best possible healthcare services for Canadians.
Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, our healthcare system is already stretched, yet this Liberal government piles on needless paperwork. The College of Family Physicians warns that the disability tax credit form is worsening the strain on family doctors and limiting limiting access to the Canada Disability Benefit. Instead of fixing the problem, Budget 2025 sets aside $10 million to help people navigate a broken system. Provinces already determine disability eligibility. Why won't the minister just accept provincial approvals for the disability tax credit and cut red tape so family doctors can focus on patient care and so people with disabilities can actually access their benefits?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Speaker, I am so proud to be part of a country that believes that people with disabilities deserve to live in dignity, and that's why we have a disability tax credit. As the member knows, this is important work for the full inclusion of people with disabilities in Canadian society, and we'll continue to advocate to ensure that everyone reaches their full potential here in this country.
L'honorable député de Montcalm.
This Prime Minister has built a house of debt. He doubled Canada's debt, added more debt than all Canadian Prime Ministers combined. He flooded our financial and mortgage system with easy cash, which bid up house prices, forcing Canadians to pay over $1 million for the average home in Toronto or Vancouver. And now the bill is coming due. Tomorrow, interest rates are expected to go up 0.5 to 3/4 of a point. And those same Canadians that this Prime Minister forced to over-leverage themselves will be hit with an uppercut of surprise higher interest rates his government said would never happen. How could he have been so irresponsible?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I know the Leader of the Opposition disagreed with us, but we chose to have Canadians' backs through the worst economic crisis of the pandemic in generations. We were there with supports for workers, for small businesses. We were there for supports for seniors and young people. We were there to support Canadians, not just because it was the right thing to do, but because it was also the smart thing to do to ensure that our economy would come back faster, and it has faster than many of our peer countries. This is why we know that supporting Canadians is the best way to build a strong future. Why aren't they supporting dental and rental for Canadians who need it?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He didn't have Canadians' backs. He went behind their backs so that he could give $54 million to the disastrous ArriveCan app that we didn't need, didn't work, and that developers could design in a single weekend. He went behind Canadians' back to give out $500 million to the We Charity organization. He went behind Canadians' back to give out CERB checks to prisoners and public servants who were actually on the payroll at the time. You know, these monstrous deficits wouldn't be quite so bad if he hadn't wasted so much money. Why did he waste so much and leave Canadians with so little?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The lesson for most Canadians from this pandemic we all have been going through.
Bacon grease spatula hot cheese. Take off. Don't get that on me, hose head. Come on. What? Go. Oh, I'm doing a special Christmas theme today. Yeah. Go.